Hey guys, good afternoon. Craig Setzer with you on a Thursday. It is October 6th, and we are into what I like to think of as the last quarter of hurricane season. Of course, when we get to about the second week of September, we're just about the halfway point, statistically speaking. Unfortunately, we have about one more quarter to go before we can really start to relax. Sorry, no music at the beginning there. I'm trying a few new things here, and I'll show you in just a second. But let's get right to it, because I always like to start off with, what are we watching, and do you need to be watching from where you're watching? And if not, you know what? After you see what we're watching here and you say, hey, I'm in the blue area, I'm good, you don't need to worry about it. This is what I call our tropical threats for the next 5 days, and it really focuses on the areas that may need to make hurricane preparations. And we've got a red area now on the map, and that is the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua there. I think you folks who live there, or if you know people who live there, you might want to let them know that if they have any type of hurricane plan, they probably need to put it into place, especially along the coast there. But hurricane conditions could be possible within the next 2 days, and that's within our 5-day time frame there. So outside of that, we have a moderate threat, we'll say here, from the northern coast, basically the Honduran, Nicaraguan coast there, into the north coast of Honduras there. Kind of a low threat in Belize, a low threat for Costa Rica, and just extending into Panama, a low to moderate threat there over the northern coast of Colombia, especially right up there on the northeast part of the coast. And basically what we're watching here is the potential for this system, which is expected to become Julia, to, once it gets over water here, to basically head almost due west and potentially bring hurricane conditions to the coast of Nicaragua. As you can see, everybody else, the threat is blue, 0, no threat right now for hurricane conditions. The rest of the Gulf of Mexico, the rest of the northern and eastern Caribbean, and as well as the U.S. coastline there, and the Bahamas. The Bahamas, of course, are in the Atlantic. So if that's all you wanted to know and that's all you wanted to see, then you have checked in, you're good to go. And if you want to learn a little bit more, let's take a deeper dive. So here's kind of an overview of the basin, and what I'm trying new here is, if you look up above me, it is to keep the satellite loop of our feature, our area of interest, on as many screens as possible. This was a recommendation from one of the viewers, and I'm always trying to improve the look of things one way or the other. I'm willing to try out just about anything, and that's kind of we're trying this out here to see if keeping this looping satellite loop above me going on almost all of the pages, and almost like the way a TV station would do when they've kind of got that picture-in-picture effect. But let's talk about what's going on in the overall basin. This kind of mess out here, this is part of what is Tropical Depression 12. The center is down there, and it's been struggling. It's had some wind shear, it's had some dry air, but it looks like it is still barely holding on there. We are pretty close to the last advisory on 12. Look at this big plume of dust coming off of Africa. This looks more like a June or July type of dust plume there. Typically, we don't see that much dust coming off as we get into October. Things start to quiet down, but needless to say, there's some dust there. Okay, that is our Tropical Depression 12 that just popped up, and we're going to pretty much ignore that. That was the forecast advisory that popped up on that. Kind of covers some of the screens here. We're going to see a discussion pop up here in just a second as well, and then we'll kind of proceed on. But kind of what catches your eye here is this area of low pressure down here, just kind of hugging the coast there of Venezuela, right along the Caribbean Venezuelan border there. And it's continuing to move to the west. And it has at least a medium size, if not large, storm envelope. So it's not going to take much once it gets over water here in a day or so to start strengthening. And I think that's going to be the forecast from the National Hurricane Center. We are waiting on that advisory for what is right now potential tropical cyclone. I like to say potential tropical storm, because what happens is that the only reason that the Hurricane Center uses potential tropical cyclone advisories is just to put up tropical storm or hurricane watches or warnings. So it's not quite yet a tropical depression or a tropical storm, but they need to get the warnings up because the time frame of it impacting land is less than 36 to 48 hours. So potential tropical storm, I like to call it, 13. We're waiting on that advisory there. Pretty quiet right now in the Gulf, pretty quiet just about everywhere else in the Caribbean. This may bring some showers to Jamaica as well as the Caymans, but really the big threat here is going to be what's going to be happening in Central America. And because of the mountains that run through Central America, of course, any type of tropical system, tropical depression, tropical storm, or hurricane can be a big, big rainmaker there. And you can see the that front that's off the East Coast. And finally for you folks in the Northeast, sunshine has returned. I know everybody breathing a big sigh of relief there. So let's zoom in now onto our disturbance here, almost a tropical depression or a tropical storm. Although I haven't seen from the few reports we've been getting. Okay, so once again, that is the discussion now on 12 out there in the Atlantic. So what I haven't seen are really strong winds yet. And the hurricane hunters won't be able to get back in and start investigating until tomorrow. So then we'll start to see some of what the winds are doing over the water. But there's been some pretty good winds at Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, the ABC Islands, out of the northeast there and east there. And you can also see these bands, we talked about this yesterday, kind of racing away like that. That is usually, I believe we have our new advisory here. So let's get to it. Okay, so here is our new advisory. It just came in, and here's the latest. Winds at 35 miles an hour, moving to the west at 17. That's a bit faster now. The motion was forecast to slow down. It was moving west around 10 within 24 hours ago. 50 miles to the southeast of Curacao. Once again, moving west at 17. So what this means when we have these faster speeds like this is that our time for preps in front of it, specifically here, Central America and Nicaragua, the window is kind of running out. This is not one of these things that's far away, and we have days and days to prepare. A system that's moving over about 15 miles an hour, typically you have not as much time to prepare. So let's take a look at the advisory here, and I'm just going to play the whole thing out. The forecast is for it to become a tropical storm by tomorrow afternoon as it's crossing the far northern part of Colombia there. And then after that, it's forecast to become a hurricane. And the time frame there is on Sunday. So Saturday night, Sunday, that's the hurricane forecast to be Category 1 hurricane. And so one of the things that I like to show here, and then you can see the track kind of bending onto the northwest, is that area of the tropical storm and the hurricane conditions. In this case, because it's pretty far out in the future there, this is the possibility of tropical storm and hurricane conditions. But you can see that there's the outline of the cone, and there are the tropical storm conditions extending outside of it, because of course the cone only tracks a point. It doesn't track a storm, which has a lot more size than a one-dimensional point. And then you can see here, as the storm intensifies, there come the hurricane conditions expanding as it heads to the coast. Pretty much based on this advisory, headed right for Nicaragua there in the coming days. Once again, the time frame here, that's Saturday afternoon, there is Saturday night, there is Sunday afternoon, and then there is Monday afternoon, moving on to the northwest there. So once again, that's the new advisory that's in. I do believe we had some maybe a hurricane watch that's been issued. Let me look over here quickly. You've probably seen it maybe on the bottom there. So hurricane watch issued for San Andreas. Also, the other islands, these are the islands that are kind of off the coast there of Nicaragua. These islands are located out right over here. There's 3 islands there. They're Colombian islands. Tropical storm warnings in effect for the coast of Colombia and right to the border of Colombia and Venezuela, and a hurricane, and that's the hurricane watch, as I said, that's for the island. So no hurricane watch yet, but the time is getting close now where that hurricane watch will probably have to be extended to the coast there of Nicaragua. So let's get back to the discussion here, what we were talking about with the system. And you can see kind of a pretty good swirl there showing up nicely on the satellite there. Those little lines of clouds that I was talking about racing away, that's typically associated with some drier air that has been kind of absorbed into the system a little bit. And so the system's working through a little bit of drier air that creates those bands of showers racing out. Big blowups of thunderstorms here, kind of some pulsing going on, not persistent thunderstorms, but the overall area is is intact here, kind of the storm envelope, and you can even see thunderstorms now starting to develop on downstream of the system there as it moves on to the west. All right, so let's talk about a quick look at the whole basin. I'm not going to belabor what's going on here. You can see our feature here, potential Cyclone 13, taking up a good part of real estate across northern Venezuela and the southern Caribbean. There's a lot of dry air out here in the central Atlantic. There's dry air now through the Gulf, and there's that one low pressure area moving off the east coast as well. In terms of the steering currents, let's talk about that, because one of the things that I think is, as far as folks here in the U.S. are thankful for, is the way the pattern kind of is setting up here in terms of this blocking high that's over the central Atlantic, but then there's this blocking ridge that extends right across the northern Caribbean, right back into the Gulf of Mexico, as far west as you can see, almost into Mexico there. So this whole area here, and what that does is that has a tendency to want to keep anything from going to the north. So anything that's going along here is going to want to keep going to the west until potentially it reaches the backside of that ridge. So let's move forward here into time. This is into tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. No change into the ridge there. The ridge remains in place. In fact, as we go into Sunday morning here, the blocking high out in the Atlantic is beginning to decay a little bit. The blocking ridge stays intact. There we are Sunday morning, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, and you can see the Hurricane Center's forecast point there near the Nicaraguan coast. Blocking ridge is still intact, and then on into Monday morning, and the blocking ridge is still intact, and then even into Tuesday morning, the blocking ridge staying intact. Now, the question becomes here, because you can start to see it a little bit, is that the back edge of the ridge becomes a little bit rounder. Is that going to give this an opportunity to go to the northwest, or is it going to keep going west? Those are a couple of uncertainties there, but that's kind of down the road in terms of the uncertainty factor, when that uncertainty is going to come into play. Let's take a quick look at the models here. And this is the European model, and in what we would say is very good agreement from the ensembles there of right westward into Nicaragua, maybe if it takes a northern bit of the track there towards the Honduran coast as well. And then you kind of see it splits a little bit here as we get beyond the 5-day time frame. There we are at 5 days coming up right there, 5 days. And then you can see we have kind of two separate branches breaking off here, one that's to the northwest, one that's to the west. Anytime we'd have anything in the Gulf, we're going to have to watch it. That's way down the road, but we'll need to watch it, especially this time of year where weather systems that are kind of over here or even here, they tend to want to get picked up to the north. So we'll watch that. No indication of that right now, but just certainly something to watch. And then also the GFS, pretty much the same story here, westward into Nicaragua, and you can see a little more members, a few more members kind of taking that northwest track there, but certainly not something to get concerned about, not anything to write home about, just something to keep an eye on. So as always, of course, if you like, please click the like button. Apparently that helps elevate this. More people will see videos like this. Click the subscribe button and click the notifications button. I'll have another update tomorrow at around 4:30 as we go into the weekend, just to make sure everything is behaving as anticipated, as advertised. And until then, I'll see you tomorrow.